Hey guys, Tony here, hope you're doing really well. I'm really excited to present this room tour today, but what made it even more special for me was that I was invited by Mick from Sydney Hi-Fi Monavale to join him for the build, and I got to dive in and help out as well as shoot the video over the course of 2 days. This room features my favourite speakers from Krix with a 7.2.4 wall of sound setup, as well as a 165-inch CinemaScope screen which looks sensational. But before we get into the video, I make content about home theatre which includes regular room tours for inspiration, as well as product reviews on AV gear and DIY helping videos as well. So start right now by hitting the subscribe button and we'll get into the video right after the intro. So Drew and Nicole live about 3 hours south of Sydney in a beautiful part of the world with rolling hills and gorgeous vistas, animals and their Kelpie Jack. The entertainment area downstairs features a bar and gaming area which Drew has furnished with his favourite rum, and while still a work in progress is a great place to entertain, watch some sports and have a drink. So before we get into the build, let's go over the room itself. It's 6.3 meters long by 5.6 meters wide and 3 meters high, and has a special bulkhead going all the way round which has a recess at the back to allow for curtains, as well as all of the cabling and the shelving for Drew to install some LifeX lights. Drew has actually purchased all of his lights, but he hasn't installed them in the bulkhead yet, but he has managed to put them around the riser. The riser was constructed during the house build and it will allow for 2 rows of seating. In the short term, Drew is going to keep these seats, but it is on his upgrade list to change very soon, and they're super comfortable for long stints of movie watching. There is also a cavity at the back of the bulkhead to allow for a PS4 Slim Edition, which will give Drew a chance to play his favourite games in the home theatre. The home theatre was constructed under Drew and Mick's guidance, with all of the cabling and pre-wiring done to allow provisions for the speaker configuration, as well as the timber studs and framing placed exactly according to the design. Michael from SRD, who works with Mick on home theatre installations, began by marking and cutting the position for the surround speakers, which are the Krix Phonics in-walls. The Phonics in-walls are from the Krix SX line of cinema speakers and have a 6.5-inch woofer, a 1-inch dope fabric dome, and are front ported. And although personally I love to keep the speakers exposed, Drew opted to have the covers on. This process was repeated for the other side and also for the rear surrounds. Once the surrounds were in, it was time to install the in-ceiling height effects speakers, which are the Krix Atmospherics AS. These are perfect for height effects, lots of detail, clarity, and having heard them in the room, they sound fantastic. Next we have the Krix MX-10 wall of sound, exactly like my own setup, going into an alcove in the wall. Now, as the screen is 165 inches, the alcove was constructed to give the soundstage as much width as possible. Initially, when the design was done, there were no spacer cabinets available for the MX-10 speakers, so Mick had planned on making panels on site to get the left and right speakers out as wide as possible. However, since that time, you may have seen my own video on the MX-10s, where Michael from Krix surprised me with spacer panels made specifically for the MX-10 speakers. So Drew decided he would like to get them, which meant that the alcove would be a little wider. To maintain the baffle wall configuration, the speakers were pushed together and the remaining space to the side was filled with acoustic material. Mick decided he would make some filler panels on the next trip down. If you haven't seen or experienced the MX-10 series of speakers, I can tell you these speakers will bring your media room to the next level and turn it into a cinematic experience. There is something about the way they produce a big sound in the room that is precise and has an equally great experience no matter which seat you're in, that you need to hear in person to believe. Yes, I'm an unashamed fan of Krix and I'm not paid or sponsored by Krix, I just love the brand and tell everyone that will listen. The MX-10 LCR are an identical cabinet with shallow mounting depth and have a 10-inch woofer and a custom Krix proprietary waveguide which gives the amazing off-axis response I was talking about earlier. Inside the center speaker we have 2 spacer cabinets which are identical in volume to the LCR speakers but filled with acoustic material and have an acoustic absorbent material on the front as well to soak any reflections coming toward them. The subwoofers are 12-inch down-firing subs and the bass response in Drew's room is fantastic. Drew also has provision for additional subwoofers in the rear corners of the riser for if and when he decides he wants to get more. But Drew's room acoustically sounds very good. There's plenty of tactile bass response in both rows from pretty much any place you sit. Now, due to a delay with the screen being shipped, we shifted gears, and while Mick and Michael worked on installing some TVs out in the bar, I got to work preparing the speaker cables and getting the rack sorted for all the gear that was going in. The cables are 4 course, so using an automatic wire stripper, I joined all of the cables together, and once they were tested with a cable tester and labeled, I began to connect them up to the receiver. The receiver is the Anthem MX-1120. I've been hearing a lot about Anthem lately, and this receiver is highly regarded, so I was curious to test it out. I didn't do any fancy cable management in the rack just yet, as Drew has ordered some other unified gear such as a network switch and an NVR for cameras, so I made things as neat as possible for now and installed the power board down the bottom with access to plug things in at the front, as there's no accessibility at the back of the rack due to there being a wall and also a cabinet right next to it. I also installed the Yamaha PX3 amplifier for the subwoofers, and as I'm pretty familiar with the settings from my own PX3, I set that up as well according to Krix's recommendation. All that was left to do in the rack was install the PANASONIC UB9000, which is a beast of a UHD player, as well as the Apple TV 4K. Back in the theatre room, Mick and Michael installed the bracket for the projector, which is a personal favourite of mine, being the Epson TW9400 or the 6050UB. This is a pixel shifting 4K projector with HDR support, lens memory, anamorphic modes, electronic lens shift, and the ability to save presets for both 16:9 and 2.35:1. So that Drew and Nicole could enjoy the room while the screen was being delivered, which allowed for configuration of the AV receiver and running ARC. It was an eye-opening experience, and I must say ARC is quite impressive how it can apply corrections to the room. I look forward to diving into a video on the Anthem MRX740 in my next video, so if that's something that you would be interested in, make sure you subscribe to the channel, as that video is coming up very soon. This was where we ended up calling it a day while we waited for the screen to arrive. So fast forward a week, and Mick and I were both back on site and commenced building the spacer panels for the MX-10s. These are actually more filler panels than spacer panels and finish off and maintain the baffle wall. Mick used timber and acoustic pinboard to make the panels, and with some rubber feet they wedged into the space nice and snug. Next we moved onto the screen, which is an acoustically transparent 2.35:1 woven screen with a 1:1 gain. After attaching all of the springs, we commenced measuring up the wall cleats which would hold the screen, and after some careful measurements to get the dead center, the screen was up. I then programmed the remote to 2 different sizes and positions with the lens memory so that Drew could switch between 16:9 and anamorphic mode, and we ran a few demos. The first was Picard, which was really impressive. Drew's a massive Star Trek fan, so it was streamed through Amazon Prime, and I must say I was really impressed with how it turned out, and without any calibration from the projector at all. Next we played my favourite demo at the moment for demonstrating positional sound, thanks to my friend Leo, whose room tour I did earlier this year, which is Lone Survivor. I can't show you very much of it as it's pretty brutal, but the way sounds were presented, you could feel the bullets whizzing by, and it was a very tactile experience. In between our 2 visits, Drew and Nicole managed to put up some acoustic curtains from Spotlight, pretty much the same ones I have in my theatre room but in dark grey, which made a massive difference to the sound in the room. However, Drew is still going to get some acoustic panels and some diffuser panels installed, as well as having the possibility for a star ceiling, which is also good at taking care of reflections from the ceiling. Yes, the room does need more treatment, but it sounds phenomenal with just the curtains. Drew also has LifeX Z strips installed under the riser and LifeX downlights in the bulkhead, which give a very distinctive look to the room, and one that I'm really fond of as it's quite similar to the way I do my room. Drew has the home theatre bug, so we'll continue to add to the room as his budget allows. What do you think of Drew's home theatre? Let me know in the comment section down below, as well as smashing that like button for me and showing Drew some love. I'll have links in the description to pretty much everything mentioned in this video, so check that out as well. I want to thank Drew and Nicole for having me over and filming their home theatre build and for their hospitality, as well as Mick and Michael for inviting me down to experience the process. If you enjoyed the video and would like to see more, I have plenty more videos just like this on my channel where I showcase home theatre builds, so consider subscribing to the channel and checking out the playlist above. But that's it for this one. You'll catch me in the next one. Bye for now.